Tributes flood in for Star Wars legendary producer Gary Kurtz after he sadly passes away at the age of 78. That is the headline on this week's Force Friday show. And joining me as ever is Stephen to discuss all things Star Wars. We're starting on a slightly sombre note this week, Stephen, because, as I did say, the legendary producer Gary Kurtz has sadly passed away after a long battle with cancer. His family released a statement confirming that he'd passed away, and also since then we've had a whole host of people leading in with their well wishes as well, including a certain Mr. George Lucas.
Yeah, we'll start with the statement from the family, John. Yeah. This came in, he died on Sunday from cancer in London, and the family had this to say about Gary. Gary was a beloved husband, father, grandfather, friend, colleague and mentor whose work and talent spanned filmmaking, photography, music and cinema history. The statement read, "He was a marine, a world traveller, an outdoorsman and a kind, compassionate human being. His life's work was to share the wonder of audiovisual storytelling through the art of film. Well known for his work as the producer of American Graffiti, Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back and The Dark Crystal, Gary was passionate about telling stories that shared the humanity of characters in entertaining ways for the audience around the world. Gary was a magnificent man who will be hugely missed. His whole family thanks you for all your loving thoughts."
Yes, indeed. We have been sending out our loving thoughts. It's obviously tremendously sad when someone of this stature in the film business dies, anybody of that stature, but just because we are such big Star Wars fans, Stephen, this was a guy who was responsible for producing the greatest Star Wars films, and still they remain to this day the greatest Star Wars films. He's second unit director on The Empire Strikes Back, for me the greatest Star Wars film of all time, never going to change. So this guy has been paramount to giving people like me the childhood that we had. I grew up watching these films, and it was down to this guy. He produced it, he helped push these films into theatres against a lot of criticism and troubles, obviously with the studios pushing back against George Lucas and stuff like that about the way they were portraying the film with the credits and stuff. So it's an absolute titanic figure in the world of Star Wars, and as George Lucas does say, Gary's passing will be felt throughout the Star Wars family through what were sometimes challenging shooting difficulties and conditions. His contributions as a producer helped bring the stories to life on screen. My heart goes out to his family, and he's absolutely right. We've seen what George Lucas is like when he goes off on his own and tries to take control of all the creative sides, and he's got sycophants around him who allow him to do whatever he wants. We've seen the prequel trilogy. I'm enjoying the prequel trilogy more and more. It's an overarching story, but they weren't anywhere near the original, and that's because you didn't have a guy like Gary Kurtz keeping them in check and telling them, no, this is what you're going to do, this is what you should do, this is what the right thing to do. So just a terrible and sad passing. Always terrible to hear of people passing of anything, but cancer really is just a horrific condition, and obviously it's been a long and arduous battle, so I'm glad the guy's found peace. But as you did reading that statement, Stephen, what a life he had, a Marine. Lived an incredibly colourful and amazingly varied life, so he'll be celebrated.
It's also interesting to see in that list of films there, Return of the Jedi isn't mentioned. Maybe he wasn't involved in that film at all.
I think he fell out.
Which you can actually see when you think back of the tone between Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. There's a slight difference in tone, slight shift there. Mark Hamill, he paid tribute as well. He had this to say, "I've lost a lifelong friend. The world has lost a kind, wise, multi-talented artist and filmmaker whose contributions to cinema cannot be overstated. It was an honour to have worked with him, and I know I am a better man just for having known him." And Peter Mayhew, who played Chewbacca, followed this up on Twitter with "R.I.P. Gary Kurtz, a great filmmaker and a man has just passed. Without him, there would have been no Force. You will be remembered in the incredible films you made that touched the lives of millions." Yes. So there's many more on this article from HollywoodReporter.com, John, but the man was, he'll be remembered for that, clearly. You can see that within the statements from the family and from his fellow colleagues in the movie business. But I remember he took part in the Empire of Dreams documentary, and he was very straight to the point type of guy who disagreed with George Lucas quite a bit and I think you need that to really push the boundaries of storytelling and how you execute the stories as well. And you're right, I think perhaps George Lucas had a bit too much free rein. I don't think Rick McCallum, the producer on the prequel trilogy, had the characteristics that Gary Kurtz had. A very strong person. I don't think Rick McCallum had that. You see that in the bonus features, where basically not just Rick McCallum but most of the crew are all just nodding along to George's ideas.
Yeah, there were too many of them. They were too sycophantic. He surrounded himself with these people who just wouldn't say a pipe up and tell him, listen, that's wrong, that ain't going to work.
But it's nice to see.
Can't have that.
Yeah, exactly, John. And I think it's nice to see that George Lucas has come out and spoke about how sad he is about his passing, because there was I don't know if there was too much of it going on, but there was always that kind of, did they have a falling out kind of rumour that always kicked about. Whether or not that's true, it's certainly, in George Lucas's words here, kind of might have quashed a lot of those rumours, perhaps. I would certainly like to think so. But the man, as you said, he lived a very interesting life out with the film industry as well, and he will be certainly missed. It was a major contribution to those original movies, and he's just going to be sadly missed.
Yeah, the final thing I'll add, Stephen, is what you touched upon with him lending a different opinion, or coming at the films with a different point of view, a different perspective. You've seen that even out with filmmaking and the likes of music, the Beatles. You had John Lennon, Paul McCartney, two totally different personalities, two totally different people coming at songwriting and music in general from different perspectives, and when they got together and blended the creative juices, it really did make magic happen. It's much the same with these films. They wouldn't have been what they were without Kurtz's involvement in them alongside George Lucas. And I'm not down on George either. This guy who made these films, he was the creative genius behind the worlds and fleshing out the characters and stuff, but while he'll be sadly missed, he's a great man. But we have to move on, sadly, Stephen, to the next topic. And it's all about Star Wars Episode 9 being a very different film from The Last Jedi. Apparently this is after Domhnall Gleeson, obviously starring as General Hux, did an interview with the Daily Express, and he was speaking all about it.
Yeah, Domhnall Gleeson revealed that working on Episode 9 is a complete change from The Last Jedi. Between the Star Wars films, there's a different energy between J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson. He says, I've been really lucky with the people I've worked with. That's the joy, getting to change it up. And this is actually, I think it was during an interview for the movie The Little Stranger, I think it was, John, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And it was just a little bit of, I think it was one question that the interviewer asked him in regards to if he could give him any sort of clues on the sort of tone where J.J. Abrams was going to go with Episode 9, and that's all he really had to say. Sometimes when you see a headline in regards to, Episode 9 is going to be very different from the previous film, clearly, obviously, it is going to be different. But I think what he means by that is Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams are very different directors, as you saw from the difference between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. I hope we're not going to get back to exactly the same feel and tone of The Force Awakens again. That was a good starting point for this trilogy. I think somewhere in between would be a good middle point, a good tone to concluding this trilogy. It doesn't really reveal too much on really what's going to be changing as far as tone goes, but I think what the interviewer, he actually says that he's got a soft spot for Hux, and I think Domhnall Gleeson's actually saying what for a war criminal, and he's really blunt about it. He says don't feel sorry for him too much, and he's one of those characters, John, that I thoroughly enjoyed in The Force Awakens. I think he could have been, I don't think he was on par with the likes of Peter Cushing's character or anything like that, but he certainly could have been going in that direction at one point. But I felt in The Last Jedi he was more of a comic figure, certainly in those early scenes with the dialogue between him and Poe Dameron in those first 5 minutes, which kind of made a mockery of the characters a little bit. But we did still see those characteristics in Hux when he was walking out of that throne room, just giving Kylo Ren that little stare, that little sneer, as he left the room where Kylo Ren was coming in to be interrogated by Snoke. But Yeah, it's just a little interview. It was on express.co.uk, John, but I don't know what your thoughts are on this. I don't really see too much in this other than he's saying there's going to be a shift in tone.
Yeah, this very much reminds me, as I did say to you before we come on, Stephen, of an interview from, I think it was 1983 or something, 84, with David Letterman and Harrison Ford, and they asked him a very stupid question. I think it was about someone else who was up for the role of Indiana Jones, and he asked him, would that have changed? But I think he said something like it would be fair to say the film would be completely different if he'd starred in the role, and Harrison said, well, yeah. And this is much the same. Of course it's going to be different. It's a different film, different director, different cinematographers on board, a different writer, obviously JJ. So it's going to be completely different. And what he's basically saying, it's right at the bottom of the article, he says essentially that it's the energy. The energy feels different. Working on set with JJ, it's totally different energy between his style and Rian Johnson's style. He does say he's been really lucky with the people he's got to work with, so he's not saying that this one's better and that one's better, but I'm going to stick my neck out here and say that JJ is better. He gets Star Wars. I don't know what it was about The Force Awakens, but for me, that film had its criticisms as well, maybe not to the vitriolic extent that The Last Jedi had, but it had the Star Wars feel, it had that magic. I remember going in to see it for the first time. I've seen it 3-4 times in the cinema, and every time I get enjoyment out of it because it had that magical, intangible thing about it. And just going to see it again after so long, I mean, when I hadn't had to wait that long, I hadn't had the issue of waiting 30-40 years to see these characters on the screen again. But it was magical getting to see it, and just something had been lost when we got to The Last Jedi. I don't even know if it was down to the artistic merits of the film, where it was that energy, just the feel of Star Wars, and where it was just because we were getting these films so often by the time The Last Jedi came out, and there was a bit of apathy creeping in. I don't know, but I can see what he means. The energy's different. I think JJ's got that intangible ability. He gets Star Wars more than Rian Johnson for me, and I know that he'll bring this into a fitting conclusion, and it will have that Star Wars feel about it. In terms of Hux himself, we're going to get into him later on, but he's a very intriguing character. I've learnt more about this guy over the last few weeks or so. Things like he's did his own father and stuff like that, so he's a very nefarious and sleek little weasel of a man, and he's right, he is a war criminal. But I digress, it's a short little tidbit. We are going to move on, and it's all about Marvel's Star Wars comic, giving us Darth Vader's most brutal kill to date. I'm looking at these illustrations. I do read a fair bit of the comics. I get them in digital form on my iPad, and they're just amazingly put together. The storytelling's incredible. It immerses you in it. It's often like experiencing watching the film itself. It draws you in. And seeing this death as well, sadly it's General Draven, the pessimistic Git from Rogue One, you'd recall. He meets his maker here in spectacular fashion. Old Darthy boy force chokes him, and unlike the other deaths we've seen when he does this, he doesn't just choke him out, no, he cracks his neck as well. What did you make of that, Stephen?
Yeah, I quite like this, John. This is one of the things I do like about the comic books. So they do fill in a lot of the plot. It's not really needed, you know. I didn't really give General Draven a second thought after Rogue One, I've got to be honest with you. I didn't really wonder what happened to him by episode 4 or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, apparently he sacrificed himself to buy Leia time to escape on a TIE fighter. And it's well illustrated in this these images that are on CBR.com. Before I even read the article, I knew exactly who the character was just by the illustration. It's absolutely bang on. Yeah. And I think the portrayal of Vader as well. Draven says, "We win. All we had to do was slow you down." And Vader snaps his neck and says, "My congratulations." And it's so well illustrated, and I'm reading that in the voices of the actors as well when I'm reading it. It's a great little, you know, piece of information that's on this website. And then you've got those other scenes with the rebel soldiers as well, firing on all cylinders towards Darth Vader as well. And he's just wielding that lightsaber. A couple of stormtroopers in the background as well. Yeah. Suggests it's not from the corridor scene, John. So it's a very interesting article. I don't have access to these comic books. Sometimes I'll pick up your iPad and I'll steal a little glance at them. But nevertheless, some of the artwork in these comics are amazing, specifically from the Marvel series anyway. Yeah. Well, I tell you what, General Draven was wrong.
All he had to, well, in a way he was right. He says all he had to do was slow you down, we win. He didn't. This leads up to the events of Empire Strikes Back, and of course Vader. He catches up with him on Hoth. Doesn't kill anyone, I know really, but he doesn't really win because he unleashes terror upon them anyway, and he makes them run again. It's a cat and mouse chase all the way through the original trilogy really, but we're seeing here it's interspersed in little details, and that's something I always love about Star Wars. We have the traditional film medium, and then we get these comic books and great novels all fleshing out the side peripheral characters and all the little stories that happen in between. But I digress. We're going to move on to the next topic, and it's all about Disney scaling back production of the Star Wars movies. Too much too fast to say. This is from The Guardian. I disagree. I don't think it is too much too fast, but yeah, I'm not the CEO of Disney. Bob Iger is, and he's confirmed that is why the production and release of Star Wars movies have been scaled back. He says that they rushed it. You can expect some slowdown. We're going to be a little bit more careful about volume and timing. Apparently it was all about investors and stuff like that. He was trying to appease them by getting as much Star Wars out as soon as possible and earning back a lot of that money, the gargantuan sum of money they paid a certain George Lucas to get the rights of Star Wars and Lucasfilm. I disagree with this completely. I says to you when it broke last week, Stephen, we were obviously late to the party with this one again because it broke after we done the Force Friday show last week. But I disagree with him. I think he's filling in for Kathleen Kennedy and making himself a scapegoat here, because nobody hates Bob. Everybody calls him Uncle Bob. We all love Bob Iger, and I think he's setting himself up as a scapegoat here. Certainly, I think he's got some sway on this. He's obviously had some decision making as to when these films fall on the calendars and stuff. But a lot of this stuff that he's talking about, like the issues with Solo at the box office, this is down to Kathleen Kennedy for me. But yeah, I've heard other people saying that he personally wanted Lord and Miller on, so maybe I'm being harsh on old Kathleen. Maybe it wasn't her after all. Who knows?
I think the scheduling of Solo, A Star Wars Story, was all wrong, John. This should have been given a 12-month interval between The Last Jedi and this film. I don't think there was enough time to promote this, especially with the new fine well that Infinity War was coming out at that time as well, April time. So it was a terrible time to be releasing any film, never mind a Star Wars film. Certainly one that people didn't really want. I'm saying this in the back of yesterday's show when we were actually talking about Solo, A Star Wars Story in our movie Burner Blog Rundown, which I thoroughly enjoyed. It's a good film. I just don't think it was marketed properly for a Star Wars film. We didn't get any trailer till really late in the day. And the anticipation levels of any Star Wars film should be based on the trailer releases. We got brilliant marketing for The Force Awakens. This was us getting reintroduced to the Star Wars brand after such a long time. The Last Jedi did well as far as the marketing went. Some of the trailers I wasn't too keen on, but the timing of them and how they were presented is another argument. For Solo, A Star Wars Story, I just felt that window between December's release of The Last Jedi and May's release of Solo, A Star Wars Story was all wrong. So I kind of do agree with Bob Iger in that sense about scaling back. I do think he should have maybe put his foot down on the release of this. I know that they've got Mary Poppins Returns coming out this December, but this is the window that they should have kept for Star Wars. It's been a success. It's been a recipe for success for Disney and Lucasfilm for the past 3 years. Why change it?
Yeah, I don't understand this, because I do recall round about the time of Solo being released that there was talk that Disney were intentionally cannibalising the Solo promotion and the toys going out into shops and stuff like that, because they wanted to maximise the Infinity War promotion that's run at the box office and all the toy sales and stuff. So this doesn't really, using that a classic 70s word that was probably used around about the time of the original Star Wars, this doesn't jive with those reports. If Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, was pushing for these films to go out as quick as possible to appease investors, then why the hell was he cannibalising on the promotion and hurting its chances of doing well when he already had a complete juggernaut that was Infinity War? I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't agree with them scaling back the films either. I don't think that's the correct decision. It doesn't matter if you've got a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 year gap between the saga films. People will always be upset if their versions of events that they've imagined up in their head over the 2-3 year period in between the films, if they're not exactly like what they envisage, then they're not going to be happy. It doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter how long you put in between the films, it ain't going to make a difference. You've got really obsessive people out there who picture exactly what they think's going to happen in the next film, and then they throw the toys 2,000 miles out of the pram when it doesn't work out. I don't think this is the right decision. I think they should continue releasing them on at least a yearly basis. I think the perfect blend for me would be saga trilogies every 5 years. In between that, all the standalone stuff and like that. And then when you're doing the saga trilogies, it should be a 2-year release between each film. And then you've given yourself plenty of time in between to release all of these other stories. So after episode 9, for me, it would be another 5 years to the next trilogy, continuing that story, and then we can do whatever the hell we want in between then. That's what I think they should do. I don't think they should go back to these 2-3 year release dates. I've seen some people saying that. Not for me. I've got used to going to see Star Wars every year, every Christmas. I don't want to lose it.
No, that's it, John. I don't think Benioff and Wise or Rian Johnson will be very happy with this news coming out. Although I do think they've been told something differently, because I think this is to really just quash rumours of other standalone films, because every now and again people are building their hopes up on an Obi-Wan film, a Darth Maul film, a Yoda film, a Boba Fett film. I think there was one, James Mangold. He was related to the Bounty Hunter film at one point, and I think Bob Iger has just probably had enough of this, because these rumours spread like wildfire, and it only leaves these fans disappointed in their own expectations. You know, no one has ever come out from Lucasfilm saying they're going to do an Obi-Wan film. It's never been said, never been suggested, but we're all disappointed it's not going to happen. It's madness. Yeah. But I think that's just a tactic. I think Bob Iger's using a tactic here just to really clamp down on the rumour mill of what is going to be released, because we already know Benioff and Wise's. We don't know how many films they're getting. It's going to be a series of films. I think that's what was quoted.
Yeah, well, he does say they're developing their sagas of their own, so that would think it's probably a trilogy at least. Because you do tend to get trilogies.
And it was announced that Rian Johnson was getting a trilogy. Yeah. So, but I agree with you. I can't get enough of Star Wars, but that's just me. I know that some people have already suggested that the Star Wars brand has been oversaturated over the last 3 years. I disagree. You can say the same about Marvel films then. But the difference with Marvel films is they've got stories lying waiting there to be used, whereas Star Wars is still building its own arc. They're kind of building from the inside and trying to branch out from those original trilogy films, so that's a different kettle of fish. But I just think that Bob Iger here has kind of tried to fuel the flames, if you like.
Yeah, well, the difference between Marvel and Star Wars as well, Stephen, and the fact that one can release 3 films a year and it's not oversaturated, whilst the other releases yearly and it's deemed oversaturated. If there's a 6-month gap between a film and the Last Jedi and the Solo releases, it's deemed oversaturation. The reason behind that is quite clear, because Marvel consistently release excellent films. They don't tend to have that many lemons, if any, and that's because they're bringing in the right guys to direct, they're bringing in the right people to produce. They've got an established universe that's all interconnected and it's all planned 5 years in advance. Star Wars hasn't got that, Lucasfilm hasn't got that. They're making the wrong directorial appointments. It's not being produced correctly. The storylines aren't being planned out in advance. It's all haphazard, much like DC and Warner Brothers. And that's why it's deemed oversaturation, because the films that are getting released aren't to the standard. I personally think this is all down to The Last Jedi. We wouldn't have heard anything like this coming out from Bob Iger or Disney if The Last Jedi wasn't the huge divisive flop for half the fan base that it was. If this film had went on to earn another $2 billion plus like The Force Awakens, I'm pretty sure we would have had an announcement about an Obi-Wan film, about a Boba Fett film. If you recall, there was rumours about Stephen Daldry coming in to direct an Obi-Wan film, and also, as you said, James Mangold for Boba Fett. So I don't think it was smoke without fire there. I think they probably had these in place, but then they've realised Last Jedi's not went over. Solo, they've boycotted it because it's not went over. It's time to take a step back and look at what we're doing here. Try and get these fans back on side. That's what I'm hoping. And hopefully they will start targeting their key demographics, which sadly is 30, 40-year-old males. Take it or leave it. You can be happy about that, or you can not be happy about that. That's just a fact. start targeting these people, making them happy, making films for these guys, because that's what you do. First and foremost, that's what Marvel do with the MCU. They target their key demographic, which is geeky, middle-aged people who were into these comics in the 70s, and then you make good films that connect with everybody out with that. But first and foremost, key demographic is the key here. Hopefully this is what they're going to do. Take a step back, make films for these guys, and then hopefully we continue getting them yearly anyway, and it's of a standard that everybody is happy with, and then there'll be no talk of oversaturation.
We'll just end this topic on, John, with the deathly silence of the president of Lucasfilm has not uttered a word on this. I find that baffling, I've got to be honest with you.
It's a call for help, Stephen.
Yeah, I just
Literally.
find, the president of this production company was very vocal all last year in regards to Force is female and the promotion of, these fierce characters. And we've not heard a peep for her since the flop that was Solo, a Star Wars story.
Do you not find it very funny as well, Stephen, that we don't have Bob Iger coming out over the head of Kevin Feige and talking about his plans for the film, how we're going to rein it back, because the guy's a success.
Yeah.
He's consistently created excellence. That's why.
Yeah, but we're just going to end this week's show, John, on it's a little bit of a rumour mill going on here at the moment, certainly on Wired.com. They've got a section that they like to call Cantina Talk, which is one of the latest rumours being, is there a resistance inside the First Order? And basically this rumour that's going about is in regards to General Hux, who we were just talking about earlier. And the rumour claims that Hux is sceptical of the direction Kylo Ren has taken the fascist organisation and wants to try to prevent him from going any further. And what this article is suggesting, John, is that perhaps General Hux is working alongside the resistance. When I did read this article, I did laugh, because as much as me would like to see this play out in a film just for the laugh of it, I can't really see this happening. I think the character of General Hux is very much in the vein of Snoke or Kylo Ren, that there's no going back for them. General Hux, as Domhnall Gleeson said in that last article we're talking about, he's a war criminal. We're not going to feel any sympathy towards this character. No. We're certainly not going to root for him. Well, we do in a sort of way, in a twisted way, but not from a resistance point of view, or the rebellion. I don't know what they're calling themselves in episode 9, but I did find it quite a humorous article, and it was some food for thought on the character of General Hux and where they could take him in episode 9.
I can't see any way back for General Hux as a good character, much like Kylo Ren. It saddens me. I think between the two primary players in the First Order, I do think that Kylo Ren is a guy that's more likely to be redeemed, even though I find that possible as well. Although deep down I'm hoping he does, because he's still got the Skywalker blood to a degree in him, and that would appease me. Just keeping that blood going into another trilogy would appease me, saddo that I am. But no, I don't see General Hux. I can certainly see him conspiring with the resistance to take down Kylo Ren, absolutely, because the man's a weasel. Says it when we were speaking about him earlier. He is a weasel, and I can totally see him. Even Domhnall Gleeson said it in that article previously. He'd like nothing more than to see Kylo Ren be stabbed with a lightsaber or something along those lines anyway. So if us could see him setting in motion the downfall of Kylo Ren, and this is the only way he can do it, conspiring with the resistance, then absolutely I can see him doing that, and then stabbing the resistance in the back and defecting back over to the First Order to resume his position, and he'd then be the highest commanding officer in the whole organisation. He'd take over the reins of power. Absolutely, I could see that happening. It's much like Krychek in the X-Files. We were talking about that, Stephen. Krychek flip-flop from one side to the other so much, to the point where Skinner just shot the man right in the head. No communication, just bang right in the head, because he couldn't be trusted. That's what General Hux would be like if indeed these events play out, as they say. I don't think even his own people in the First Order would trust him, but yes, he's a weasel of a man, and I can't for the life of me see how, even if it did work out, the resistance would even want to work with this guy. He wiped out the political strongholds, the Hosni system.
Yep.
1 by 1, 3 planets, all the leaders gone because of this man. Why would they want to conspire with him? I don't know, but it's a rumour. We're going on Mike Zero here, so Anything's possible in Star Wars. Very unlikely though.
We do like to base our Force Friday show on facts, John, but it's always nice to have a little bit of rumours floating about there. Some of them we can certainly retcon right away. Some of them we like to think possibly could play some part in a Star Wars movie, but it's always nice to speculate, and it's certainly something that we're going to introduce to the Force Friday show going forward. I think having a little bit of a rumour mill at the tail end of each show wouldn't do us any harm. Certainly as something that will give us a lot to talk about as well, certainly in those quieter weeks when Star Wars stories are very few and far between. But we would just like to thank you once again for joining us on this week's episode of the Force Friday show, and we will be back next Tuesday with Box Office Chat.
Remember guys, if you enjoyed that latest episode, then do hit that like button, comment below, and maybe subscribe to the channel if you haven't done already. If you want to follow us on social media for all the latest updates from Movie Burner Entertainment, then we can be found on Twitter and Facebook at Movie Burners. You can also listen to us on Google Play and iTunes at the Movie Burner Podcast. And last but not least, if you want to access all the latest written reviews and the occasional article, then that can be found on our website at movieburnerintertainment.org. Until next time, goodbye.